Hi, I'm Deborah.
And I'm Lawrence.
And in this video, we're going to talk about some do's and don'ts for when your child or teen has depression. And so I have a fair amount of experience with this because I was a child and a teen with depression, and then
Then a parent.
and then I've been a parent with depression.
And a parent with a kid with depression.
Right. So I think we've got like a lot of bases
I don't know
covered
how
here.
many years of experience between us.
Sorry.
I don't know how many years of experience between us we have, but it's a lot.
Yeah. So, if you're a parent with a child who has depression, I totally understand where you're coming from. It's very scary. It's hard to know, exactly what to do. And on top of it, as you'll probably agree with me, kids and teens are not necessarily really communicative with their parents.
True.
So, so that's definitely, a roadblock. So the first do is do your homework. Even if you think you know a lot about depression, because depression is really complicated, right? Everyone's depression is different. We're starting to understand that more and more. So, so those cookie cutter symptoms lists that you see, those are very cookie cutter, and a lot of symptoms of depression do not apply to everyone. Yeah, everyone's different. So so do your homework, read as much as possible.
Do your research. That's the
do
bottom
research.
line. Know
Yeah.
what is know general information, I'd say, is the basic stuff, and then as you observe things, maybe do research on specific symptoms.
Yep.
And that sort of thing.
Yeah, and if your child gets prescribed an antidepressant or
Research them.
other medication, research them, because
and look at the side effects. Make sure that if you see any of those side effects, you notify the doctor right away.
Yeah. What you also want to do is log symptoms that once your child starts taking the medication that you maybe aren't sure that these are symptoms, but it's a good idea to have it logged when you talk to the doctor and say, hey, he started the medication on Monday, the 2nd, and a week later he started having, whatever the symptoms are. And again, remember that depression is complicated. And
Very.
do remember that you know your child better than any doctor. So if the doctor seems to think that everything's going well and your child's treatment is going well and you aren't so sure,
You don't think that they are quite right, believe in yourself more than the doctor.
Yeah.
Or at least
your child.
Bring up the concerns to the doctor. Be like, hey, I know you said they're doing fine, but I have these concerns and I am quite concerned about these. I'd like you to maybe reassess your opinion, or well, I don't know how to phrase it, but basically present them. If you find evidence contrary to their assertions, then you got to talk to them about it.
Remember, the doctor only sees, first of all, the doctor only sees your child for tops 20 minutes after the initial assessment. So you see your child not 24 hours a day, but you're with your child.
Unless it's a therapist, then they see the child for longer.
Right. But the fact is that as a parent, you still see your child a lot more than this person does, than the medical professional. So, you have to listen to your gut. I remember there was that time when you had pneumonia, when he was really young. We took him to the pediatrician, and literally he was sitting like this on my lap. And this is a kid with ADHD. And I don't remember when the last time was I saw him with his head hanging down. And my husband and I were saying to the doctor, something's really wrong. Something's wrong. We just feel this. And the doctor was very condescending. And he was like, oh, just give it a few more days. Kids usually get past this. And then we ended up in the emergency room. There was the kind of pneumonia that I guess you couldn't detect with a stethoscope. So we knew something was wrong, and the doctor.
And you were right, and the doctor was wrong.
Right. So the thing is that just do trust your gut and your intuition.
Anyways, yes, trust your instinct. I'd say you raised the child. You obviously know them a lot better than any. Even if they're a professional, you have
their
the experience.
Is limited. And also, don't let them be condescending and act like you're an over worried. You're too worried. You're over. You're obsessing about your kid's health. If your gut tells you that things aren't right, that your child is not at the level they should be as far as their mood, you listen. There are other doctors. Okay. If you really feel like you're being condescended to and the doctor's not spending enough time, remember that one you had for the ADHD meds?
Yeah.
Or just like they take like 5 minutes and then you're out the door. Yeah. Find another doctor.
But also there is a point where if you cross it, you are kind of.
Yeah, there are some parents. Yeah, okay. As long as you're being reasonable. Okay.
You have to make sure you're being reasonable.
You've got to know. Just do a gut check. Just ask yourself, am I being unreasonable? Am I being, obsessive and crazy? And, if you're not the kind of person who calls the doctor's office like 3 times a week, or, when your child has like a 99.1 fever, then you're reasonable. Okay. And just trust your gut. So the next one is don't try to treat the depression yourself. Okay, you may have seen a lot of articles and stuff about how getting enough sleep, de-stressing, good nutrition are all very important when it comes to depression. That's absolutely true, but those are not going to treat your child's depression.
So yes, you do know your child better, but I'd say that the person with medical experience in the case of knowing how to treat something, in that case, knowing how to treat what's going on with your child, that is definitely something that doctors know better than the parent. However, obviously, as we said, you know your child better, but the doctor knows the treatment options better.
Yeah, I mean, strike a balance. Don't believe all the hype about big pharma are evil and they're just trying to pump your child full of drugs. Treatment does not always mean medication, okay?
Here's the thing. You
did interrupt me.
Okay, fine. There is big pharma.
Yeah.
There is things wrong with them.
They're trying to make money, absolutely.
Hell of a lot of money off people suffering, like leukemia medicine.
And the
cancer
problem
meds.
is also that most health insurance wants to do antidepressants over therapy because antidepressants are much cheaper than therapy. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. Medication gets pushed a lot more than it should. But again, treatment does not always mean medication. Don't get pulled off too far. Don't get pulled too far in either direction when it comes to your child's treatment. Don't just say, okay, antidepressants, that's it, that's all we need. But on the other hand, don't be like, oh, antidepressants,
I know the best.
Evil. Don't go to a Western doctor because, they're just going to try to pump your child full of medication.
Don't be the type of person that says, I'm going to go to a Reiki healer to cure my child's depression. That's not going to help. Don't be an idiot. Don't. Please. It's your child's life.
It's your child's life in many different ways.
Yeah, I mean,
even if your child is not suicidal, your child is still spending their childhood depressed, and that, from my own experience, and from Lawrence, from a lot of his experience, that is a wasted childhood.
Yeah.
But so this is where doing your own research comes in. This is where reading a lot of articles, a lot of information that shows different sides.
From reputable news sources.
Right, that shows all the different sides of treatment will help you make up your minds. But of course, it also helps to have a doctor you trust. So again, if you don't like your doctor and you don't trust your doctor, you don't feel good about your child's doctor, unless you live in an area that has very, very few options, you should be finding someone else.
And even in the case that you do, I'd say if you live in an area with not a lot of doctors qualified to do that sort of thing, I'd still say you do need to find a new doctor.
Well, and
even if it makes it, like you have to take a longer car ride.
Yeah.
Your child's health is the most important thing.
Yeah. And the thing is, though, I have found GPs who are more knowledgeable about psychiatry than
qualified psychiatrists.
Or more caring and more interested in the patient, whoever that is, recovering. So if your child's pediatrician seems to really have a handle on it, stick with them. If they refer you to a specialist, to a psychiatrist, and you just don't feel good about that person and you don't have a lot of other options, go back to your pediatrician. Okay, if it's someone who's caring and there's someone who's keeps up on all the literature and everything, then you might very well be better off with them.
If they know what they're doing, stick with them.
Yeah. Or you feel that they have your child's best interests at heart and they're not going to stop until your child is better. That's the important thing with any doctor with psychiatry. A lot of them are like, things are better. Things, you shouldn't just go for things are better. Things should be back to, well, your child has a normal mood, which means they're happy sometimes, they're sad once in a while if there's a reason, or maybe, maybe there isn't a reason, but it's a really short time, like a couple hours. Normal moods. That's what you're aiming for.
Yeah.
The next don't buy into the idea that technology is the reason for your child's depression.
Please don't. Okay.
We did a video about social media and depression and technology and cell phones that you might want to look at, because we went into this in more detail and looked at a study that was very misleading.
It was idiot.
The exception to this, don't buy into technology being the reason for the depression, is bullying. If your child's being bullied online, then that's something that you definitely want to address.
Definitely.
There also is definitely an aspect of, for instance, especially Instagram, where
people edit their photos because they're insecure.
Girls especially may be dealing with some body image issues because of the heavy duty editing that goes on Instagram. It's pretty easy to find some of those.
Kylie Jenner actually looks like that? No.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways you can show your child that this stuff is edited, and just make sure that they also are following some body positive accounts on Instagram. But yeah, there are aspects to to being online and even cell phones, texting, that could lend themselves to your child being bullied. But as far as just in general technology, don't demonize it. It's very easy to demonize it and say this is the reason for the rise in depression and anxiety among teens. I'd argue just as much that it has to do with 9/11, school shootings, the pressure to do well in school so that you can get into a good college, so that you can get a good job. I mean, there are a lot of different factors, and no study has come out and definitively been able to prove that social media and cell phones are contributing to, or are causing depression and anxiety.
If you're the kind of person who believes that technology causes depression, then you're in the same vein as the people who think, oh, video games cause violence. Like, I can go play Witcher 3 and kill some demons, and that's not going to make me want to go stab somebody through the chest with a sword.
You also use, online gaming to stay in touch, and you've made friends with people who are thousands of miles away.
Exactly.
You stay in touch with your friends from grammar school that you don't see normally by playing Minecraft.
Yeah.
It's just a tool. Technology is a tool like any other tool.
And another great thing, I personally use video games as a form of escapism. It's a coping mechanism for a lot of people. I mean, I don't like this world, so why don't I play in one that's not this world?
That's another point, is if your child is playing a lot more video games
don't yell at them.
then
or
it's
anything.
probably because they need escapism. When you have depression,
Exactly.
you need escapism because life is tough, and that's actually going to lead into my next don't sweat the grades right now. Okay, your child will have plenty of time once they're recovered from depression to boost their grades, get good grades. But the problem is, it's possible that they're barely capable of getting up, getting dressed, going to school. If you have never had depression, just think about if you had the flu, like a really bad case of the flu. How would you feel? Would you feel like going to work? Or if you dragged yourself to work, how good a job would you do on the work you did that day?
Yeah,
That's basically what it's like.
that's why I'm failing a couple of my classes because I'm depressed. I mean, here's the thing: don't treat depression like a free ride for not doing anything. Don't let them just sit at home all day, skip school. They do need to do work, and I'd say be encouraging about it, but don't. As we said, don't sweat it. Don't get really, really crazy about it. Just make sure they're going to school and they're actually doing some stuff. I'm not saying they need to be getting A pluses constantly. I'm just saying make sure they are putting in
Just
as much effort as they can.
ask them to do their best.
Yes.
Okay, but just don't make them stress about grades because this is just
That's going to make them feel
the
worse.
stress actually exacerbates depression. So this is not the time to worry about it. And the next one is a do. Do talk about suicide. You are not going to put the idea in their head.
It's a hard
They may
topic.
have suicidal thoughts and they may not. But you have to keep that dialogue open. I can't tell you how many parents thought everything was fine with their child, never occurred to them that their child might be suicidal, and then they found out the hard way that their child was suicidal, okay? Keep an open dialogue. This is what I did with Lawrence. I was frequently asking him, are you suicidal? Do you have suicidal thoughts? And if he said yes, I'd say, is this kind of an abstract or do you have an actual plan? If your child says they have an actual plan, then that's when you need to call their mental health provider and tell them, and it's possible your child might need to be checked into the hospital.
Yeah.
Okay, this is for their own safety. And the other thing is, if your child is having suicidal thoughts, get any guns out of the house. Okay, get any pills that they could overdose with out of the house. Proximity is a big problem with suicides. Okay, don't make it easy for them to complete this. But the most important thing is to keep the dialogue open. Okay, constantly be talking to them and saying, "Hey, I'm just checking in. Have you been having suicidal thoughts?"
So, I mean, it is a really hard topic to talk about, obviously, because obviously if you have to discuss that possibility, then you're thinking about that possibility, and that's god-awful. That's horrible to think of. You don't want that to happen, obviously. And, I mean, you're not putting the idea in their head. I mean, whenever she talked to me about suicide, didn't make me think, maybe I should go jump off a bridge. I mean, it didn't really have a negative effect on me. It made me realize that my mother actually cares about how I'm feeling. And, that's a great thing. And, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a hard discussion to have, but you need to. It is necessary that you do.
Frequently, not just once. Then the next don't let your child push you away and kind of lock you out. I remember one time when Lawrence was just really having a crisis, and he went out in the backyard and was sitting there by himself, and I went out because my husband said something to me and was very concerned. So I went out and Lawrence said, "Go away." And I said, "No, I'm not going to." And I just kept talking to him. He kept saying, "Go away." And, I talked to him and it became clear that he was really having a crisis. He was suicidal. So that was, when we first called a psychiatrist, I think that weekend. So, your child, there are so many different things going on in your child's head when they have depression. But the thing to remember is they don't want to scare you. they don't want to make you feel guilty or sad or unhappy, especially the younger children just have this kind of distorted thinking because they don't want you to worry. But just like don't let them shut you out, and persist and keep talking to them even if they yell go away at you.
Obviously, there is a limit. You can't be constantly just. I mean, don't be a hover or whatever helicopter parent. That's what it is. Don't be constantly talking to them. I mean, you do need to give them some modicum of space, but you do need to keep on top of them. I mean, you got to keep an eye on them. You have to make sure that they are, not immediately about to break down or mid breakdown, but do not make them feel stifled, because then that'll make them feel worse.
I mean, again, that's an example of go with your gut. Lawrence can be a bit of a drama queen, especially when he was younger. I mean, I could have just said, he's just trying to get attention, and, it's not a big deal, and I don't want to smother him. But I knew something, I just had a feeling that something was seriously wrong. So that's why I persisted. I mean, there have been other times when, especially when he was younger, he'd say, go, just leave me alone. And I would, because I just didn't have that feeling that something was wrong, really, really wrong. So again, listen to your gut. But the important thing is to keep the communication open, not to smother them, but to make sure to talk to them as much as possible, about their depression. And things will get more and more comfortable the more you talk about it. And it'll get kind of run of the mill like it did when we talked about it.
Yeah.
And finally, don't feel that you have failed because your child has depression. I mean, there's of course a caveat. If you have been abusive in any way or neglectful, if you have some serious problems of your own, like a substance abuse or something, and you've been neglectful, but if you can honestly say that's not the case, then don't blame yourself. Okay, some of this is genetics, some of it is situational. With Lawrence, he got bullied a lot and criticized because of his ADHD
and my weight
and his weight when he was in elementary school, and that is what I think really triggered the depression. So don't feel you have failed, even if you've been trying to do their treatment and do everything you're supposed to be doing and they're still depressed. It
isn't your fault, really.
It's not your fault, but you also have to be the one to keep pushing. Okay, because your child's not going to. Partly because they're a child and partly because they're oppressed. So it's up to you to keep going until you're satisfied that your child's moods are normalized, okay, and that they're happy.
In any case, we hope that you found this video helpful, educational, whatever. And if you liked it, you can give it a like. If you want to say anything, comment, any form of comment, criticism or otherwise, you can leave it in the comments below. And if you liked this content and you'd like to see more, you can subscribe and we keep producing it. All right. In any case, we hope that you have a nice day.
Take care.